Yeah, no, I get signs all the time,
Yeah.
and they're subtle sometimes, but often. Griffin leaves me feathers, and Tamara sends me red-tailed hawks or red. Yeah, there's dreams.
But there's also the griffin bird.
Well, the
And
griffin bird.
Jeff and I were getting ready to go on a cruise. We were hosting a bunch of people on a cruise, and we were in Miami, Florida, standing on the deck of the cruise ship, looking off, and what do we see?
Well,
Griffin birds.
Well, and I call them griffin birds. They're actually buzzards. They're turkey vultures. But at my home where I live, and I live in the mountains, and they started roosting in the trees. And they're kind of goofy looking birds, but when they fly, they're magnificent.
And you know they're connected to Christ consciousness.
Yes.
And they're the only animals that they don't necessarily hunt, but they
eat carrion.
Eat carrion,
yeah,
and then they can
yeah.
detox. It's like the transmutative. They're very powerful.
They are very powerful. I didn't
Tell her
know
what the
this.
name of your youngest son is.
My youngest son, Griffin, and that's very true. So anyway, these birds are showing up everywhere. Like they're indigenous around where I live, but then I went to California and they were all over there, and I was traveling about the country in Miami, Florida. I'm like, how are they circling around the ocean? I mean, this doesn't make sense, but I had a dear friend say, look up the meaning of them.
Yep.
And in anciently, they fly with the least effort of any bird. They don't kill anything, they eat carrion, but they were referred to, I believe in ancient Egypt, as the griffin bird.
Oh.
And I'm like, Griffin, Griffin, this is it. Now, here's the crazy story. So I become aware of this. Oh, that's a griffin bird. That's a griffin's sign. I return back home after all these travels, and I like to sit out on the back deck and have breakfast. And so I grab breakfast, I go out on the deck, and literally, like right there, is this big feather that's come off of one of these. They're a condor, they're a buzzard, they're a turkey vulture.
Yeah.
But it's literally right there.
It is.
It's just left right there as this sign saying, "See, Dad, don't be so slow. I've been giving you these signs, and I'll lay a feather right here so you
Well, now
have it."
Jeff feels better about the rainbows.
No, I had that exact same feeling. After about a dozen of them, I had that same feeling about,
like,
she was saying, okay, Dad, you get it now? I mean, is this in your face enough, you know?
But your story about the bird, I do workshops in our backyard. We do breathwork and bowls and music journeys for groups, right? And there are always animals that just show up the day of, and we never know why. But one day there was a roadrunner, just this massive roadrunner just walking around the backyard before we set up. So we have our circle, and I think to mention it because every time an animal shows up, sometimes that owl flies in and sits and listens to the bowls with the group or whatever. So I mentioned it, so just wanted to acknowledge that there was a roadrunner here earlier, and this woman in the front row started crying. And she said, I came here today because I wanted to connect with my mother-in-law who passed. And before she passed, every day in hospice, she would sit at the window, and the one thing that brought her comfort was this roadrunner that would sit outside the window. And again, I've never in my life seen a roadrunner in my house or even out on the road. I don't see them, right? This was a sign. And so we knew it was for her. And there'll be other times where another animal will show up, and like a crow or whatever. It happens all the time. Every single time there's something. Yeah. So this is powerful. The bird imagery.
The bird medicine and
bird medicine.
Yeah, Tamara, before she passed, in fact, when we were young, like there was this show called Lady Hawk. It was a bad '80s Michelle Pfeiffer, and she loved this show, and I watched it with her, and then she'd watch it, and gosh, this was back in the VHS tape days. I mean, I'd even say, what do you want to do this week? What do you want to do tonight? She'd say, let's just curl up on the couch and watch Lady Hawk. And I'm like, again? Like again and again. But it's like she was drilling this into me because, and the premise of the film is there's a curse, and the lady turns into a hawk in the day, and the guy turns into a wolf at night. So they just see each other for a moment. And I think about life, and there was this moment that we shared together, and there's these moments and dreams and visions where she's there, but she's not there. But every time something significant happens, or when she wants me to know she's near, these red-tailed hawks show up. And I've had dear friends that don't even know about this. I had this beautiful friend of mine recently who doesn't know anything about this. And she shows up with a red-tailed hawk feather. She's native, so she can pick those up. But she said, this is for you, without any knowledge of anything that's going on. And it's like, well, there's a wink. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, there you go.
And these things happen all the time. Now you could pass it off as coincidence. I say there are no accidents. There's no coincidence.
Right.
Everything has meaning if we're open to it and if we're watching.
Who is it that said, is it Einstein that said, you can perceive life as, no, you can perceive life as a series of miracles, or you can perceive that everything is a miracle. And as soon as you shift to perceiving that everything is a miracle, everything is a sign. But until then, the ego wants to devalidate these things as thinking we're just making them up to get through. But if you perceive everything as a miracle, then you know it's for you.
The license plate right there, the song that comes
the
on the
license
radio.
plate sign.
Well, did that billboard just say, this stuff happens
Yeah,
all the time.
exactly.
It happens all
Well,
the
you know,
time.
I post on Facebook, because I love music. Music is my muse. So every night I like to just post a couple songs I like, whatever. So last night I posted 5-man electrical band signs. So,
No way.
yeah. Yeah, so if you look at on my stories, it's called signs. So that was a sign to me that I have signs to get myself my own sign.
A few weeks ago was Rachel's birthday. And Jeff knows this. I was contemplating in the morning, and I was speaking to the universe, and I said, it'd be really nice if somebody remembered Rachel's birthday just spontaneously, I was going to a worship service. It was on a Sunday. And so one of the things Rachel loved to do when she was a little girl was she'd put olives on all of her fingers and run around the house eating the olives off, right? And so there's this guy, and he's speaking over the pulpit at this worship service. And he's giving a regular kind of a religious talk and stuff, and I'm kind of bored and distracted. And then all of a sudden he starts talking about how much he hates olives and how all of his siblings love olives, and they put them on their fingers and run around the house eating them off of her fingers. And I looked at my wife, and without her knowing anything about what I was thinking or what my petition had been that morning, I looked at my wife and she goes, does that remind you of Rachel?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow.
There you go.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
And I think asking for the signs is a really big part of learning how to see them. If you're very specific and you write down, we did this challenge. There's a book called E Squared, I think, where it's different practices where you can write down exactly what you want to see. You give it a timeline, you write it down, and you ask the universe for it. And I've had a friend who she wrote down, I want to see a blue Volkswagen van, and then by the very end of the timeline, I think she was able to see it. It just drove by, and she said, okay.
I have a dear friend, her name's Suzanne Giesman, and she had a profound, she was a very left-brained naval officer, a commander in the Navy. She was aide-de-camp to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, flew around on Air Force One and everything. Didn't have a right-sided spiritual cell in her body until her daughter was killed by a lightning strike on a flight on a runway. She was in the Air Force. And then she started getting experiences, and now she has these profound experiences. She's written a bunch of books, and she talks about it, and she talks a lot about signs, and she encourages people to ask for a sign.
Yes.
And she points out that when you write down on that note something very specific, it's not that you're commanding the universe to show you this sign. It's that the universe is giving you what is coming your way and preparing you to receive it. It's the blue van is coming.
Because you knew.
But I'm going to impress you to ask for the right thing so that it confirms your experience.
That's very
and that's an interesting way to look at it too.
That is a cool way to look at it.
Well, I used that list to get my husband. So after I went through that divorce with the bad guy, I thought, I'm not going to date anybody because these people are going to lie to me, and I didn't trust anybody. So after about a year of being alone with just my 2 kids and the 3 of us, and then I thought, well, if I ever do meet anybody, I want to make sure that they have the right character traits. So I took a little book and I put it next to my bed, and I would the first 50, 60, 80, they're easy to think of, kindness, compassion, empathy, all the good things. But then I kind of ran out. And so I started watching everybody that was in my daytime experience. And I looked and I watched and, is kind to wait staff at restaurants. And I started adding all these other things. And at night, I would, look through the list and I would say to the being that's up there, the divine, I don't know who this person is, but I know that you know who they are. And if you can bring them to me in a safe way so that I can evaluate that these things are all written about them and in the right timing for their life and for my life, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you so much. So one Saturday, after doing that for a whole year, I had 116 things on my list. My son walks in and says, "Hi, Mom, this is Erin. She lives in the neighborhood. We want to go see a movie. Will you take us?" So after I agree to take them, they say, "Well, can you come over to her house and pick us up?" And so, okay, sure. So I get in the car and I go over there, and she lives right around the corner, and I go up and knock on the door, and this 7-foot-tall guy opens the door. And
Tall on your list.
Was that on your list?
Tall was on my list. I put must be tall because I had dated a guy in college that was shorter than me, and when we danced, he laid his head on my shoulder, and that felt very weird at 5'9". So I end up going to the movie, and they had asked him to go to the movie too, and the two of us went to pizza afterwards, and I asked him 3 questions. Have you lived in Santa Barbara a long time? He said, yes, I was born and raised here. He was born at the same hospital I died at. Then I said, where do you work? And he said, I work at UC Santa Barbara. Oh, okay. And so what caused your divorce? And the face that his face made when I asked that showed the pain that he had been through in the situation in his life that matched what I felt like I had been through in my life. That I literally, across from at the pizza parlor, I literally fell in love with him. And we ended up dating for 4 months, and I checked those lists off, and I would mark things off that was him, watching how he behaved with all the kids. Oh, I had 2 and he had 2. And then finally, 4 months in, we decided that it was right, and we decided to plan a wedding, and we got married 6 months to the day from the day we met, and we've now been married 31 years, and he is that list of 116 things. I just super ordered him.
I have the same thing. I also started a list, and I went through this whole process of, speaking of signs, it's kind of cool, but I started the whole process of the list, doing my own inner work, learning to love myself through kind of a coach with that. And then I went through this whole life mapping process that I'd done before that helped me manifest something else in my life. It helped me manifest my career and a lot of other mystical things. I pulled out this big paper, wrote all the things from that list that I had been keeping on my phone and just adding every day, put it on this map, and then rolled it up and put it away. I did this whole process with the map. I danced and put oils on it and colored it and made it beautiful. And then 2 weeks later, I met Neil, my partner, my sacred partner, wonderful man, and it turns out he was going through the Deepak Chopra abundance manifestation practice at the time and also made a map the same time I did. And then the night that we met, we knew it was magic, but speaking of signs, on our 2nd or 3rd date, we decided if we saw the green flash, it would be a sign that we were meant to be together, but we already kind of knew, right? But it was a rainy day, and the green flash is when the sun goes down in San Diego. There's often this green flash that happens right when the sun hits the horizon with the ocean, and it creates this green flash, and it's supposed to be this auspicious sign. And everybody cheers when it happens. It's a big deal. It doesn't happen all the time. So we didn't see the green flash at the sunset, but as we were pulling out of the parking lot of the beach, there was one of those green flash brewery trucks that had lightning flashes going from the top down the truck bed, green flashes, and we thought, okay, well, we'll take that sign.
That's a sign.
Yeah.
The universe has a sense of humor.
But that manifesting and asking for signs and saying, hey, if this, yes,
That's it. And now you're getting married.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, sacred partnership, beautiful partnership. Born through much pain and challenge, but then to be able to find yourself and love yourself, and then manifesting is the next level of signs, right? You start to recognize the signs, you start to realize your creative power, you start to ask for what you want, you start to raise your vibration. It's a very cool.
I have a good friend, Jeff and I have a mutual friend. She was going through a really rough time in her life, and she was moving away from her husband.
Yeah.
She was moving all the way across the country and then to Hawaii. Wow. And as she was driving across the country, she was second guessing herself, and she was crying and then saying, "Oh, did I do the right thing? Did I make the right choice?" And she pulled up behind this bread truck, and it said on it, "The right choice, the only choice." And she snapped a picture of it. I have a copy of the picture. Yeah.